Your SSI savings limit is stuck in a decade that gave us cassette tapes and dial-up modems, and honestly, it shows. If you've ever wondered why $2,000 still feels like the ceiling on your entire financial life, stick with me, because I'm going to walk you through exactly why this happened, what's actually changing right now, and what you can do while we wait. And if this kind of honest breakdown is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm tracking this stuff closely and I don't sugarcoat it. Let's start with the obvious question. Why does it feel stuck in the past? Because it is. Literally. The last time Congress touched the SSI resource limit was 1989. Think about everything that's happened since then. The internet became a thing everyone uses. Gas prices have doubled, tripled in some places. A cup of coffee that used to cost you $0.25 now runs you $5 if you're not careful. Rent has climbed to numbers that would have seemed absurd back then. And through all of it, through every single change in how much everything costs, the amount you're allowed to have in savings while still qualifying for SSI has sat frozen at $2,000 for an individual, $3,000 for a couple. Not adjusted once, not touched. I want you to really sit with that for a second, because it's easy to hear a statistic like that and just nod along without really feeling it. So let me put it in real terms. If that $2,000 limit had simply kept pace with inflation since it was set, it would be sitting well over $5,000 today. Some folks who study this stuff say if you go back to when the SSI program actually started in the early 70s and track inflation from there, the number should realistically be closer to $10,000. Instead, you're still working with a number that made sense when your kids were in grade school, maybe when you yourself were still working full-time and couldn't have imagined needing this program someday. Here's what makes this feel especially unfair when you really think it through. This isn't a program that's overly generous to begin with. SSI exists for people with very limited income and very limited resources, folks who are older or who have a disability and who genuinely need help just to get by. It was never designed to make anyone comfortable. It was designed as a floor, a basic safety net. But when that floor's rules don't move for 37 years while everything above it keeps rising, the floor starts to feel less like support and more like a trap that punishes you the moment you try to climb even a little bit higher than where you started. And that's really the core problem here, isn't it? You're told your whole life to be responsible. Save a little when you can, keep an emergency fund, don't live paycheck to paycheck if you can help it. Then you end up on SSI. And suddenly, all that advice becomes dangerous. A $200 birthday gift from your grandkids, a small tax refund, someone finally paying back money they borrowed years ago. Any of these can push you over the line and put your entire monthly check at risk. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you did exactly what every financial advisor in America would tell you to do. So now let's get into the part I promised. What's actually changing? Or at least what's trying to change. Because here's something a lot of people don't realize. This issue hasn't gone unnoticed. It's not like nobody in Washington has thought about this. There's a bill right now called the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act. And it's honestly one of the more sensible pieces of legislation I've come across in a while, mostly because of how straightforward it is. It would raise the individual limit from $2,000 to $10,000. For couples, it would go from $3,000 to $20,000. And critically, it would tie both numbers to inflation going forward. So we'd never be sitting here again in another 37 years, having this exact same conversation about an outdated rule nobody bothered to update. What really stands out about this bill is who's actually behind it. This isn't some partisan wish list from one side of the aisle. It was introduced by a Democratic senator from Nevada and a Republican senator from Louisiana, working together, which tells you something about how broadly people recognize this problem exists. It's got backing from AARP, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, from Justice and Aging, from the National Council on Aging, even from companies like Microsoft. When you see disability advocates and business groups and lawmakers from opposite parties all nodding along to the same fix, that's usually a sign you're looking at a real common sense problem rather than a political football. Now, I promised to be straight with you, so here's the honest part. This bill is not law. It's currently sitting in committee in both the House and the Senate, which is an earlier stage in the process. It hasn't gotten a floor vote yet, meaning the full House and full Senate haven't had their chance to debate and vote on it as a whole. Some of the sites that track these things and estimate a bill's odds aren't particularly bullish about this one clearing committee anytime soon. So if you're watching this hoping I'm about to tell you the rule already changed, I'm not going to pretend that's true. It hasn't. Not yet. But here's why not yet still matters, and why I don't think this is a story worth ignoring just because it's stuck in limbo right now. Bills like this move when enough people understand what's at stake and start talking about it. That's genuinely how this works. A bill sitting quietly in committee with 200 organizations behind it and bipartisan sponsors isn't the same as a bill nobody cares about. It's a bill that's waiting for enough public attention to finally get a hearing, then a vote, then real momentum. Every person who understands this issue and mentions it to a friend, a neighbor, their own representative adds a little more weight to that effort. While we're waiting to see what happens in Washington, I want to open up something that already exists right now, something available to certain families today, not tucked away in some future bill that may or may not pass. If you or someone you love has a disability that started before the age of 46, there's a saving tool called an ABLE account, and it lets you protect up to $100,000 without any of it counting against your SSI resource limit at all. That money can go toward housing costs, transportation, education, assistive technology, healthcare, all the real expenses that come with navigating a disability. It's one of the most underused tools out there, mostly because almost nobody explains it clearly. And if it applies to your situation, it's worth looking into seriously. In the meantime, since the current $2,000 rule is still what you're living under today, let's talk about how to protect yourself the smart way. Keep a close eye on your account balance, especially in the days right before the end of the month, since the Social Security Administration checks your resources specifically on the first day of each month. If an unexpected sum of money lands in your account, whether it's a gift, a refund, or a repayment, reach out to your local Social Security office right away and ask how it affects your standing before it turns into a problem, instead of after. And remember, not everything counts against you. The home you live in doesn't count, no matter its value. One vehicle you use regularly doesn't count. Your personal belongings, your furniture, your keepsakes, none of that counts either. A modest amount set aside specifically for burial expenses is excluded as well. I do need to say this clearly because I don't want anyone watching this to make a costly mistake out of fear. Please don't try to give money away or hide it just to duck under the limit. I understand the instinct, but if the Social Security Administration determines that a transfer was made specifically to stay eligible, you can be hit with a penalty period lasting up to 3 years, where you're locked out of benefits entirely. That's a far worse outcome than the one you were trying to avoid, and it's simply not worth the gamble. The better path is understanding the actual rules well enough to work within them honestly, which is exactly what we've been covering. Here's the bigger picture I want to leave you with. This rule being stuck in the past isn't really about a number on a government form. It's about millions of people like you, who worked for decades, paid into a system, and now find themselves trapped by a policy that simply forgot to keep up with the world it's supposed to serve. You're not asking for anything extra. You're asking for a program that reflects 2026, not 1989. A program that treats responsible saving as something worth encouraging, rather than something to be quietly punished for. Whether this bill eventually passes, gets rewritten, or stalls out entirely, you deserve to understand exactly where things stand and what tools already exist to protect yourself right now, today, regardless of what Congress decides to do next. That's the whole point of a video like this. Not to hand you false hope, and not to leave you feeling hopeless either. Just to give you the clear, honest picture so you can make your own decisions with real information in hand. If this helped you see the full picture, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to keep following this bill and let you know the moment anything real happens, whether that's good news or a setback. And if you know someone on SSI or someone caring for a parent who is, share this with them. The more people who genuinely understand this issue, the harder it becomes for it to just quietly disappear in some committee room where nobody outside Washington is paying attention. you've spent a lifetime earning the right to a little security. Let's make sure the people who write these rules don't forget that.